What is going on, storytellers? Today, I have a very special first interview for you guys with Caleb Wu, a composer from Georgia, a film composer from Georgia, now operating out of South Carolina. He's amazing. He's got a lot of great ideas, and he has a lot of insight for us in this first episode. So I hope that you will sit back and enjoy this 50 minutes, 45 minutes or so, however long this episode is, of just some of his work, how he's overcome some of his obstacles, and what's next for him. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Past Me, who recorded with him. And yeah, we're going to get right into this podcast. Welcome to Crossroads, episode 2 with Caleb Wu. All right, what is up, storytellers? We are here with our very first interview. Today we have a composer originally from Augusta, Georgia, who now works out of Greenville, South Carolina. He is a singer, a violinist, a harpist, but he has a newfound passion and love for film composing. So we have Caleb Wu here on the very first interview of the Crossroads podcast. What's going on, Caleb?
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking me to join you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've known you for about 2 years now. We've actually not really had the chance to
Yeah.
speak and get to know each other, but I'm really glad we're doing it now and doing it here. Obviously, we talked a little bit before this, got to know each other a little bit, but thank you so much for being here. I know you're a busy
Yeah,
man. You've
absolutely.
got all of those starring lead roles in film composing world to do. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule for me.
Oh, absolutely.
So, so yeah, you're newer to the world of film composing. That is a
Yeah.
world that I kind of have a lot of love and passion for.
Mm.
But storytelling within that realm? What is it? What does it mean to you? What does storytelling mean to you as a film composer or aspiring film composer?
Wow. Storytelling.
I know it's a big question,
Would,
isn't it?
yeah, it really is. Defining an entire, I've actually I've seen storytelling play out in a lot of different fields, not just composing. So, more recently, I've been looking at it as a term of how art affects that, or visual arts, but as well as in health and how you try to get a concept across or explain something. So even in education, in music and acting, obviously some of them are more lend themselves more to storytelling. And so I would say that storytelling is the art of, so it's an art within an art for composing, and
Okay.
it's the art of having a concept and connecting with another individual or an audience, and connecting that concept to them in a way that they can come away with something that they can apply to their lives as they move from away from your story, or that something that connects with them, that impacts them, that they can continue sharing with someone else.
Wow. That I like whenever I ask that question, I know like I'm prepared for like a crazy answer because I feel like you can't really define storytelling,
Right?
and
Yeah, exactly.
that's the whole point of this podcast, right? It's to like see what everybody thinks of storytelling, what it means to
Mhm.
them, because it's going to mean something a little bit different to everybody because everyone's
Yeah.
got their own perspective and everything, which is
Hmm.
awesome. But I like how you were talking about how it's really like a chain reaction type of thing.
Yeah.
It starts with one piece or one work or one piece of art, and then goes to an audience member, and that audience member, like their interpretations is its own art in itself, and that will lend itself to more stories. And so it's just kind of like a snowball effect for storytelling, which is why it's
Mm.
like so cool is you can never really get to the bottom of the
Yeah.
barrel of what it is. So you have I would say that you have like more of a practical idea of storytelling with the way that you said how it goes, how it relates to health, and
Hmm.
like how people interpret it like physically and truthfully.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're thinking about storytelling, it's so metaphorical and it's so intangible in a lot of ways, but also in terms of film composing, it is tangible because you've got actors, you've got directors that have their own personal tastes, and then you are adding your own flair to that sort of thing. I saw that you went to a masterclass at BJU where you went to school, where you went to school, and you saw Richard Kaufman. He said writing for film is like seasoning someone else's food. I saw that in your Instagram post, and I thought that was amazing because as a lover of music and a lover of film composing, I was like, wow, it's like you've got the director, you've got their food, and same thing with like the actors and everything, because the director trusts the actors to portray the story in a certain way, and the director trusts you to portray the same story in a similar way, but in a way that makes it all come together like a great dish, like a 4-course meal. You're just one of the little seasonings in that meal. So what do you think film composing in terms of storytelling brings to a film, like emotionally? I mean, whatever that means to you, because like again, this is like a huge thing to unpack as well, so you don't have to go crazy on me, but you can if you want to. But what do you think that film composing brings to that whole dish of filmmaking in general?
Yeah. So just like trying to define storytelling, trying to encapsulate that in a small package is also it's incredible. When I was working on that film for the senior capstone, that's when I went to the master class. It was some cinema faculty, the senior I was working with, and then the composer, Lee Holdridge, and then Richard Kaufman, who was actually leading, or he was conducting. We were having artist series, which was when they were having. It was called Symphonic Hollywood. So they were playing a bunch of Hollywood scores, and Lee Holdridge's scores were in there, and then Richard Kaufman was conducting it, and their wives were there, and we had that we had that masterclass when he said that quote, and it was interesting because just like in cooking and in culinary arts, and in painting as well, and I think I should probably pull more of painting because that's what I'm more familiar with, is there.
He's a painter too, ladies and gentlemen.
I dabble.
Didn't
but
dabble.
Yeah, just a little bit. But the people think of art as like this visual piece of a lot of color and a lot of like putting paint onto a canvas. But just like artists, they start with a blank canvas, so it's just white, and then you add on your color to it, and it's the art of where to put color and where to leave color out. Same for film and cinema, is where to put sound and where to leave sound out, at least from the composer's side. So when we were working with it, film music really does control the emotion of a scene and kind of can help enhance an audience's emotional response to a scene. But equally so, if it's there where it shouldn't be, it's like it may not necessarily be awkward so much as there's too much music. Sound could have lended itself better.
It's not as powerful as it could be.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's just as powerful to put music into a scene as it is to leave it out. And being able to understand where you leave it out and where you put it in is a big facet to making sure that your music reflects what the director's going for. And with your own expertise as the musician working with a film director, if you think your music fits the scene and you're like, I use these techniques and I follow like this composer's artwork and they do this for this kind of emotion, and if you say that and the director comes back to you and says this music's garbage, I need something different here, first, you can't take it personally because it's what you're creating something for them and they just don't like what you've created. So you need to come back with something else. And if whatever you think fits, but the director doesn't think it fits, you can discuss that, but it ultimately comes down to how the director sees the music fitting into the piece.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest part of how music fits in with them.
The crazy thing about that is that like you could compose something absolutely amazing, and
Hmm.
it could be like perfect for, at least in your mind, for the moment, and then the director doesn't think so, and that can be, I feel like, pretty discouraging to a lot of people, because
Yeah.
especially yeah, you're like, speaking from experience, it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, you create something that you pour your heart and soul into, or I mean, you
Hmm.
put a lot of time into. I mean, whether or not you put a lot of time into it, it could just come to you and you're like, boom, 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 you score it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
perfect. Sometimes it takes like days, weeks, even whatever your timeline is, months, if you're like in a bigger, more professional environment. If you're in like
Hmm.
a more independent environment, I feel like it's a shorter time frame, because you're trying to work those kinks out, as quick as
Yeah.
possible, because you don't have all the time in the world because of small budgets. But like, it can be really discouraging to work on something that you think is amazing, and then it just like isn't what the director wants. and
Yeah.
and I feel like a lot of different storytellers have that sort of discouraging moment. It could be an actor, like they make a choice and it just doesn't bode in the way that the director wants this scene to be interpreted by the audience. So from your perspective, these, I would consider these as obstacles in like the whole storytelling journey as a film composer,
Hmm.
as someone who's, you put your heart and soul into a piece, it doesn't work out, the director doesn't like it as much, maybe they say this is really good but just not for this scene. How does that affect your ability to continue with the project? Like, you have your mind set on this piece, you think it's amazing, and it is amazing, but it just doesn't work well. How do you keep going? Like what does that do to your I guess, like, status of motivation for a project?
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely say you can't ignore the fact that it can be really discouraging. As a
Mm-hmm.
creator, you've made something that like a piece of you is in, and
Yeah.
then someone's like, nah, and they
Yeah.
just kind of
It's
toss it
yeah.
aside. So, but part of it is not yourself as the artist just discarding it as well and saying, okay, obviously that was bad and I should throw it out and they're right. I'm wrong. Let's go back to the drawing board.
Mm.
Instead, as like for musicians, you can kind of keep that in your portfolio and say this is like like maybe say it was a melody, maybe it was a sound effect, something,
Mm.
and you can keep that as an idea for something later.
Yeah.
Because just because it doesn't work now doesn't mean it couldn't work later on in the film, maybe even in an entirely different film project. So
For sure.
so whenever a director or whoever you're working with comes to you and is like, or maybe we're even just sitting back and watching the film and saying, yeah, that music may have sounded great while we were editing, but when we're sitting here from the audience perspective, it just is too much. We
Mm.
need to tone it back. And really, if you keep your mindset on the fact that we're not telling a story because we have great art and we want to express that great art, but rather we're using great art to connect to an audience. And if it doesn't connect to an audience, we haven't achieved our main goal.
Mm.
And so it's less discouraging because you're actually catching it before it goes to the audience.
Very true.
And and then you're like, okay, well, I'm glad we caught this, so now we can change it. And it's actually really motivating because it's this collaborative work that it's actually a quote from one of the professors at Bob Jones in the cinema department. She
Lay it
said,
on us. What'd she say?
"Yeah, oh man, she was like, she said, actually, she was quoting George Lucas. I think it was George Lucas. He said
Of course she was.
that films aren't released; they escape. And so, for like working on music, and you're always having that critical feedback, that constructive criticism that you're working with as you're working with music, and as you're going and you're just trying to create something to get to this deadline. But once you get to this deadline, eventually this film is released, and you can watch it in theaters and see it and listen to it and totally be like, wow, we made this, we created this is where we're at, but also see areas that you could have changed during the process,
Mm-hmm.
or some things that you're like, huh, I wonder if we had done this instead of that. So there's never this, you've never like reached this height and then once you get there, you're like peaked. Instead, it's like
So like
you're
a film
constantly
escapes
growing.
before you're able to like make it perfect in a way.
Right. And so you want to strive. I want to say this like with like multiple caveats. Like you want to strive or achieve for a level of some kind of
Perfection.
perfection.
Yeah.
Yes, perfection with quotes. Like we
Yeah.
definitely need those air quotes because if you're trying to achieve perfection, then your film will never be released and your music will never be released. But it is good to have some kind of standard for what you want to release, but you can never get like that ultimate perfect, especially if you're an independent artist working by yourself. It's one of the
Mhm.
things I learned from working with someone else is the fact that when you're a composer, you can also have someone who's working on your writing stuff. They actually score it for you or edit the score for you, send it back, you check that, then you send that to your orchestrator or something like that. So as an independent artist, it's even harder to attain those things. You
Mhm.
can get it, but you should not be as hard on yourself when you're working on stuff.
Wow.
I don't even know if that answered your question.
No, I think it did answer my question. I mean, I like that quote about a film escaping. Do you think it works the same way with like the compositions that you create? Like, do you like in terms of
Ooh,
striving for perfection? Like obviously you are your, harshest critic. Everybody knows
right.
that.
Mm,
And once you get something to where you think you want it, there's always going to be a next step. You're like, maybe I want it this way. But eventually you have to release it. You have to submit
mhm.
it to a director, a producer, whoever is grading this for you or looking at it for you,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
and and in that sense, do you think that the music as well is escaping? I mean, obviously you're going to continue progressing as you create more compositions, but just hypothetically, you're doing a project and
Hmm.
they ask for your compositions. You're not so happy with them, but they are, I guess you could say, up to the standards that you think the directors are looking for. So then
Yeah.
you give it to them. So, in essence, it escapes. Do you think
Hmm.
that it works the same way in these compositions, like that it's never, where you want it to be? Or do you see that do you see some of your projects and you're like, wow, that was successful. Like I'm proud of that, cause sometimes
Yeah.
people aren't proud of their work and it sucks. It's like, it stinks, which is why I'm kind of doing this podcast. I want people to
Yeah.
be encouraged. So what do you think about that? Like, do you think that your music escapes?
Yeah. Definitely. So I like your goal that you were talking about right there is just encouraging artists in their art and in their craft. And I definitely say I look at some of the music, not all, some of the music that I've created, and I'm like, wow, I really some of it's like, wow, that was really
I'm
bad.
gonna clip that
But
so you
other
say all of it, and then you like all is amazing, and then that guys, Caleb thinks that his music is the absolute best. You heard it here first on
no.
Crossroads.
Oh man. Yeah, if only that were true. I do look at some of the music I create and I'm like, yeah, I do enjoy some of the music I've created.
Hmm.
Obviously, sometimes I'll listen to it and think I could have changed some things. And there are some pieces that I go back to, and I enjoyed the simplicity of it as an amateur composer. I I was mentored through it as well, so it
Hmm.
was cool to see having a professor kind of say this this music, like as we're working on small bits of it, I'm getting feedback on it and getting encouraged as a learner.
Yeah,
So I think that's one of the big things first is investing in your craft by taking
experiencing.
lessons from some doing it, but also getting experience from some like working with someone else, kind of like listening to this podcast, listening to other artists who have done certain things, checking out their work,
Hmm.
learning from them and investing in that. And then once you've like that's I think the coolest part about being able to look back at your art is seeing what you had learned from podcasts, from books, from the internet, from YouTube, from teachers, from peers, and then
Mentors.
seeing how that mentors, yeah, all of that, and seeing how that has shaped a piece that you
It's
released.
an art form
And
in
so,
itself, isn't it? It's
right?
like
Yes.
sculpting you. It's like all these people are
Hmm.
putting their fingerprints on you, and I mean, eventually one day you're still in the process of getting sculpted and having that completed masterpiece. But for right now, you're still a work in progress, and I feel like all of us are
Right.
still works in progress, like always. Like this podcast is always going to be a work in progress because
Right.
there's
Yeah.
always something new to be added to it, which is amazing. Like there's no you know, just there's nothing short of just everything, you know.
Right.
There's
Yeah. Yeah.
everything you could ever ask for in the world, in the universe, you know. There's just an
Mm.
infinite amount of things that you can add to your own personal, you know, craft, or whatever your standard for success is. You can always add to it, and I think that's a beautiful thing, because you know, nobody's perfect, like Hannah Montana says. I don't know if you know that. Did you know that she said that? Did you?
I've probably heard it.
Nobody's perfect. I gotta work it. That's what Hannah Montana says. So yeah, I really like how you
Yes.
said that. You know, learning from everybody, having all of those different influences on your life, just tell a story in itself. Because I mean, you, Caleb, you have your own story to tell, and you're doing
Right.
it through something that you love, through composing and
Mm.
through, I mean, singing and playing violin and playing the harp, which is absolutely awesome. Dude, the harp is so pretty. I don't think people understand that. Like whenever they think of a harp, they think of a film where, you know, they're in a ballroom or something and someone's just like playing the harp.
Yes.
But I mean, is that the, you know, is that right? Or is harp much more than that?
No, I'm so glad that you said that. So I haven't played harp as long as I've played the other instruments.
Okay.
Honestly, I think I've played harp probably as maybe a little bit less than I have been actually as a composer. But from study of like timbre and stuff like that, harp is so much more. So like yeah, when you
What's
think of
timbre?
harp,
For everybody that's listening
oh
to this,
sorry, yeah,
explain what timbre
timbre
is
meaning so I guess the best
and
example
how
is
do you
two
spell
instruments
it?
play the mm, okay. No, sorry. It's Timbre, I think,
Good
but it's
job. Good
pronounced
job.
timbre.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Sorry, I just had to say
Ooh,
that
I
because
can
I
win the
thought it was
spelling
funny.
bee.
Yeah, you won the spelling bee. Look at you go.
Ooh.
I'll mail you a trophy.
Oh, sweet. I was hoping I get a prize.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, but timbre is I think you could probably call it a science. I would say it's a science
Mm-hmm.
of differences between two instruments and the way they sound.
Okay.
So you can have a violin play an A, I'm gonna say A4. I think that's wrong. But you can have a violin play an A, and then you can have a harp play the same A, and then that sounds different. It has a different textural. It's like a sound texture is what timbre
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And so the differences between instruments and then instruments played together create different timbre. So there's like millions of different ways to
Yeah.
play just the note A.
For all of
And
you
so
guys
that's
listening,
what
I know
timbre
what timbre is. I just wanted him to explain it to you.
Oh man, it's such a hard question.
No,
But
no, it is. It is like it's very, very subjective. Like, sure,
but
there's going to be a
it's fun.
definition for it, but there's a million different ways
Hmm.
to explain what it is. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
you're
could have
just
probably
explain
Googled it.
harp is just has a different timbre, and it's just very unique.
Yeah, and so like when you talk about when everyone thinks of harp, they think of all this like very angelic sound, which it is, or they
Mm-hmm.
think of like very like elegant or like ballroom, like you said.
Yeah.
But also, John Williams used it in a lot of
Star
his
Wars.
pieces as well. To what was that?
I said Star Wars.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I just adjusted my earbud when you said that.
No,
Um,
all good. All
but
good.
but yeah, and there's even some interesting comments about his use of harp in Star Wars too. But
Hmm.
the it can have such a different aesthetic, add a different aesthetic to music that I think could be explored more by composers. So like
Okay.
how Hans Zimmer was actually like rebelling against the typical use of an organ when he was when he was composing
Interstellar.
Interstellar, where it was like everyone thinks of I think he said this, everyone thinks of like vampires and like that kind
Dracula.
of stuff. But yeah, exactly. And he wanted to have a more intimate sound with it. And so I think it's a fun thing to do as a composer is to go against what people typically think an instrument should be doing and create something new, and then people accept it because it sounds good. And
Mm,
so then you just create this whole new texture that can define your music as a composer.
yeah.
So that was a long
Yeah.
answer to yes, I play the
No, I
harp.
like that. Just really quick, what are the interesting comments that you have about John Williams' use of the harp in Star Wars films, or his use of the harp in general? I just want to know if this is a hot take or something that the people need to be aware of.
I don't think so. It's something my professor brought up when we were working on composition. So we were talking about like who I was wanting like working towards sounding like, or at least talking about different musicians and their techniques. And he uses harp, but the way the harp is played, it's very prominent in some of the, I can't think of the titles that it's in, but it's very prominent. And the harp itself is actually not a loud acoustic instrument. So
Hmm.
typically, if you were to write for it, if it was unmiked in, say, like the Sydney Opera House, which doesn't use mics, you would have to have the harp playing with um, quieter, like the string instruments. Brass, um, the reason like the orchestra is the size it is, which I'm sure you know, is because it's a balance between the the acoustic ability of the different instruments. So you have like 20 violins and three French horns, because three
Yeah.
French horns is about the equal volume as 20 violins. And so the way the harp is used in his music, it's playing above like an entire orchestra, because you can hear it in there and you can hear it very prominently. So it was just the way it was mic'd, or the sound producer had worked on it. And so it was an interesting thing to hear. I think it was either my professor or this podcast I was listening to talking about how sound mixing affects the actual sound that you hear whenever it's played live or on film, because harps typically aren't heard over the orchestra.
Hmm.
But because of the way it was mixed, you could hear the harp. And so it's not a
So
hot take, I don't think, but it's an
he was
interesting
like
note.
really wanting to use the harp, like that the harp was
Yeah.
in like it was without question something that he just wanted at the forefront of the music. So I mean, obviously he thinks it's important, and you play it. So by the commutative or the something property of math, John Williams actually thinks that you are important. If you didn't know that, Caleb, John Williams thinks you're important. um,
Yes.
yeah, no, it's an
I
amazing
love that.
achievement. I know. I'm actually, yeah, I'll actually be flying you out to meet him next week. So I hope you've
Oh,
packed your
sweet.
bags for that. Yeah, that's
I am
awesome.
already packed. I'm already there, actually.
Oh, really?
You know,
You had dinner with him? Man, I want to meet him so
yeah.
bad. I would love to.
Oh,
Um,
same.
John
I
Williams.
want to go to one of his concerts. That would be
Me
amazing.
too. They're all crazy expensive though. Like every
I
anytime
can
they come out,
imagine.
I'm like, but people
Yeah.
are willing to pay it, and he's worth it. So,
I mean,
um,
I'll go bankrupt to see it if I can.
right? I'll take out a loan. Why not,
Yeah,
right?
right?
Some of my student loans or something. Um, awesome. Well, I mean, we've had a great conversation so far, but now I kind of want to get into a little bit of what you've like a little bit about your works, like your pieces, the things that you have produced and composed. You don't have to get, I mean, you don't have to describe all of them, but there's just a couple. I was, looking at your YouTube, looking at your Instagram, and from the
Oh,
time that I
thanks.
met you, it was about 2 years ago at this point,
Yep.
and you have some of those. I think they're the Instagram reels
Hmm.
actually they're not Instagram reels, they're stories of your like improvisation. And the very first
Oh,
one
yeah.
that you did, I don't know if you remember. I mean, I don't know if you look at them often, but the very first one that you did about 2.5 years ago was from How to Train Your Dragon. And it was the John
Oh,
Powell piece. I think it's called Once There Were
yes.
Dragons. But I just had to bring that up because first of all, John Powell is amazing. If you're not in
Yes.
the filmmaking worlds and you don't know who John Powell is, he did one, How to Train Your Dragon, as I just said.
Yeah.
And you should go listen
It's
to
a
it if you
must.
haven't. It's
You
a
must
must. It is
listen to it.
amazing. And he's released like some acute, like piano only like books for it, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would love to know, but I don't. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not well read like that. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because that's 2.5 years ago, and now you're
Dang.
working on Macbeth. You have that. That film coming out called Willow. You finished it? Yeah,
Yes.
so you
Yep. It
finished
was
Willow.
premiered a few weeks ago,
Okay, wow.
actually.
Where can I mean can we watch that anywhere?
I'm not sure. So the way the capstone works, the seniors are basically launched into the working world
Hmm.
with a film that they can submit to uh, different
Producers
film
or
producers, film competitions.
okay, okay.
So all of them are styled to where they could do that. And the one that I did actually um, it already is an award-winning film. It had won an award. I can't remember what the competition was called, but it came in second place to actually one of her classmates. So it
Wow.
was it was a cool achievement.
That's
When
awesome.
we were watching the film, she told me about that, and I'm like,
Wow.
wow.
Was
So
that the one I know you sent me one or like a clip to one. Was that the one that looked like it was like a very flat rock landscape?
I no,
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
This one was inside a house.
Oh, definitely not then. That's completely
Yeah.
different. So how long did you work on that film for?
That was a, let me see, I think it was almost an entire semester. So
Oh,
from August to, well, it was more like um, September to December,
okay.
like before we went on Christmas break,
Nice.
or before classes let out for Christmas. We worked on it not every day, but it was almost every day.
Don't you lie to
It
me,
was an
boy.
interesting,
I'm kidding.
no, it was like, it was, we would we were initially I was composing some pieces and then she was just going to plug them into the film, and then eventually it got to where we were meeting in the sound booth um, regularly in the evenings just to edit 30, not even 30 seconds of film to get the music like spot on.
Okay.
And that was a fun process of learning collaboration because this was the first project I've worked on with someone else,
Mm-hmm.
composing in general, and then just like figuring out how music fits into the film. So which is why I feel like I've like kind of had this like rocket pad kind of launch into film, is because I was working with a director who I highly respect for her work, and then learning from her insight, learning from professors, and then um, doing it almost literally every day.
Yeah.
So
Wow. So that was
30
so
seconds of music can go by. It says so slowly.
yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you're I mean, when you're getting so meticulous like that in like filmmaking or like
Mhm.
composing, it's like, you know, the nitty-gritty is like, you know, striving for perfection like we were talking about earlier, but
Yeah.
and I mean, the more you do that, the closer to perfect you're going to be. Like you might not ever get there and you probably won't because
Right.
there's no such thing as
Yeah.
perfect. But
Yes.
the more you focus on the meticulous, you know, nature of the pieces, the closer you get to that point. So that's really cool. And
Exactly.
that was your
Yeah.
first like collaboration with like like your first film composing gig, I would say, just, you know, collaborating with people.
Yeah, I think so. That was the first film. I forgot to say that also like the music video that we released was the year before that. So I had, it wasn't technically, I wasn't writing for film. I was just writing a piece, and then we recorded like a music video of that. So that was, this would have been my second collaborative work, first actual film
What
work.
was that piece called?
Uh, the the music video was Forest Hymn, and it was published by Zion
Hmm.
Productions on their YouTube channel.
Speaking of Forest Hymn, how on earth did you get a piano
Oh
into the
gosh.
forest for this Forest Hymn? Because
Oh
I saw
man.
the video and I was like, there's a piano in the middle of a stream. How did, like, what? I hope that wasn't a nice
Mhm.
piano. Like, or
You
if it
know,
was, how did you protect, like, how did that happen?
yeah. So there is an entire, oh man, it was such a fun process. So I literally randomly get this text from a friend, and she was like, "I have this idea. Do you have time to like meet for lunch or coffee or something?" And so we grabbed, I think it was coffee, and then she was like, "I just bought this drone and I really want to do a music video with it. So like, what can we do?" And
Okay.
I had just finished taking a composition class, and I was like, I mean, I could write something and we could film it. And she was like, "I just envision a piano in the water." And I was like, That sounds amazing, but I don't know how this is gonna work because
What
like
kind
you
of
don't
budget
you
we got here?
yeah, you do realize like how much these things weigh, and this is gonna be entirely like unfunded. It's gonna be all these college
Yeah,
grads
yeah.
like bright-eyed,
Yeah, you
bushy-tailed
know how
wanting to
that
create
goes. It's
something.
like, this is gonna be awesome, and you're like, wait, we have no money because
Yeah,
we're in
yeah.
debt right now. So how can we do
Yes,
this?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So it the we actually shot in two locations. There was a field, and then there was also the creek, and the creek was actually the second place we shot at, and I think it was like a year apart when we shot because
Mm.
we had filmed one side, then we were going to film in the stream, but by that time it was like freezing cold and it was already cold, and so we went to the stream location, and the stream is actually it's at a friend's house, and they were super gracious to be able to like let us come and film there. So it was really cool how like that worked out. And
Mm.
but the stream was actually like obviously you could see it was in the forest,
Yeah.
and the
It
person's
was in the
house where the
forest, which
driveway,
is why I'm
yeah, it
asking you how you got
was.
a piano there.
And so we like where the driveway was to where the creek was about it wasn't a long ways, but it was, I feel like, 100 yards maybe. It was pretty deep in the
That's a
forest. It wasn't
football
like
field,
super far away
guys.
from
100 yards is a football field.
okay, I don't think it was that long. I think I'm exaggerating. It felt like that
No, I'm saying that
because
I'd be
we
impressed if you did that. That's pretty cool.
no, yeah, it definitely wasn't that. I'm really bad at estimation. But we put the piano, we were gonna get like wheels or something
Hmm.
to make it all and basically an all-terrain piano.
Yeah.
And we didn't end up doing that, partially because I was supposed to do that research. And then I was like, hey, well, we could just make this sleigh out of we in order to get the piano into the field for the first shoot, we had bought these um like 10 by 2 boards and had the piano we'd like it was like a little assembly line. We'd have the piano on the board, we'd push it forward, and then once it got to the end of those boards, we'd have people run around the piano and put the boards on the other side and then kind of keep going, so creating the track as it went down the track.
Okay.
And then we used those boards underneath the piano, strapped it on to slide it through the forest, and then we used a um, riding lawnmower to pull it while we helped it stay upright. And I mean, nobody died, got pretty close, but like the piano would come through trees and we'd have to like brace it so it wouldn't fall over. And then we got to the where the creek was,
Hmm.
and the creek, so that was relatively flat. We were kind of going downhill, but
Okay.
we were up about 3, 4 feet above the creek,
Okay.
and the creek was like obviously 4, 5 feet
Uh-huh.
down, and so we had to figure out how to get it down one slope, down the other, and then into the creek into a place that was like kind of stable.
Hmm.
So we scouted that out. We'd actually scouted it out the year before, and it was really cool because when we scouted it out, the creek was, or they sent us some pictures when it had snowed and the snow melted. The creek was like full,
Okay.
and so when we got there to record, though, it was pretty shallow where we were going to put the piano, and then the guy who owned the land and his son, who was a friend of ours, they were looking at how to basically get the piano down.
Hmm.
So we used the two boards that it had come down on, and we basically made a ramp that kind of guided the piano into the into the creek, and then we left it there.
And it's still
I'm
there to
kidding.
this
We
day. It is
no,
still there,
yeah. Legend
guys.
has it, it's still
Legend
there.
has
No,
it.
we
It's actually
we
playing itself. It's playing itself. So
yeah.
if you
Some when
go,
you go through the
to where they
forest,
filmed it, it's just music. It hears the
yeah.
trees fall, and when no one's around, the piano hears the trees fall. When,
So if you ever wonder, it does make sound.
yes, it does. And actually, the piano plays noise when no one's around too, and the trees hear it.
Ooh,
Hmm.
that actually sounds creepy.
That does. Yeah, that's crazy though. A lot of
So yeah, I
commitment
think
there.
we're gonna try to release the behind the scenes so you don't have to listen to me try to explain it. You can just see it
Okay, I
and
would love to
watch
see
us
that.
struggle.
Yeah, I would love to see the behind the scenes of that because I envision what it looks like, you guys using these 2x4s, bringing them
Struggling,
down.
yes. Mhm.
So yeah, struggling. I'm sure in the video, can you see you guys like struggling?
Oh yeah, there was one time that the piano was going down the slope, and I think there was like three people on one
Mhm.
side and like one person on the other, and it just like leaned, and I was the only one that could.
Whose
I
piano
like
was
jumped there to
this?
like. It was We found it on Facebook. I think the one
Marketplace.
of the friend that had the drone found it on Facebook Marketplace. She was looking for a piano that was relatively inexpensive, and I think she found this one for free.
Yeah,
And actually, it plays really well.
it's probably just a
It was a
space
nice
issue.
piano.
They
Yeah.
had to get rid of it for the
Oh no,
space.
so they I think yeah, I think they had been moving or something
Well,
like
if you
that.
guys need a piano,
So,
check Facebook Marketplace. They might have one for free on there.
yes.
So,
Oh
with the
yeah.
parents'
And if you ever
permission,
want to
log
make
on
a
to
music video,
facebook.com.
yes.
Yes.
Get your free piano today.
Yeah, there's a lot of free things on Facebook Marketplace that
Yeah.
like I mean, I saw like a desk the other day, and
Nice.
because I'm gonna be in Austin for only 3 months, I can't just like go get stuff. So I saw a desk and I was
Right.
like, dang it, this is like a really nice desk. I wish I could have it. But we've gotten so far off the topic of storytelling, and that's what this podcast. We're telling our own stories, right? So like in
Right?
in in a sense, we are still on topic because we're
Yes.
telling
We're
stories.
living the mission.
Exactly. You have some music on Spotify. If you look up Caleb Woo on Spotify, WOO, then you will be able to
Yes.
find your EP called it's like the Na. What is it? Tell us.
The not a
The
not.
Not and Not, and
Yes.
that's a character that you came up
Yeah.
with during COVID. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm obviously when we were all trying to figure out how to live life in
Mm.
quarantine, those years ago, um, I had been painting before and then just picked it up again because obviously in college it was kind of hard to maintain multiple hobbies,
I feel you,
much less
man. I
one.
feel you.
Much less any. So I got my paints out and was like, I don't even know how I just created the character. I had learned this like sketching technique, so I was kind of doing that,
Hmm.
drawing circles, and then was like, hey, it would be cool to have an astronaut, but he explores the water instead. So
Yeah.
I was really interested in telling children's stories.
Yeah.
And so I created him and then was like, hey, the idea of soundscapes as
Hmm.
music evoking a landscape is kind of what I was going for with that piece. So that's kind of how that all
Yeah.
evolved.
You did that. I mean, I listened to it actually before we hopped on the podcast. I listened.
I
It's
appreciate it.
only an EP, so it's 4 pieces, but they all. I mean, they're great. They're really good. Like they are.
I
They're
appreciate
super
that.
cool. So like the fact that it's like it's a children's character. I would say that
Mhm.
the music. It's not as like playful as I would assume it would be, like for like a children's type of story, but it is like
Yeah,
soundscapes. So it's, I mean, you put it behind, like if you're reading the story to someone and you play the soundscape behind it, it's gonna work. My question
right.
was, like, is this like a book that you want to write? Like, would you ever think about illustrating the Not a Not?
That's so I don't know if I would call it the not a not because people hear that and they're like, what the heck does
Yeah,
that mean?
yeah.
And it's kind of a word I made up.
Well, it's
But
very clever. So
so that stems from I'm a very multi-passionate person. So I actually, well, growing up was really loved. Yes, yes. Um, but I had really loved animals and specifically like finding reptiles, going to the aquarium and all of that stuff, and then going to the ocean and
hmm
finding seashells and just not actually physically being able to explore the ocean, wondering like what is that like? What would that be like? And then I've always personally compared the ocean to kind of like space exploration because our world is primarily ocean and most of it's unexplored.
hmm
So we still don't know like what's at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. We don't know what actually lives at the bottom of the ocean. Honestly, if you look up a picture of a blobfish and look up one that is in its natural habitat versus what we
I'm
call a
gonna look it up
blobfish,
right
they look
now.
very different. Yes. They
Blobfish.
look very different. So the blobfish looks kind
Oh
of like a
yes, I've
melted piece of
seen
bubble
this
gum.
before.
Yes. But in its natural habitat, it's actually a stunning creature. It looks kind of terrifying.
I
Let me
found a
make
picture
sure.
of it. It looks more like a real thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. It doesn't look like some kind of alien. And
Like the
so we
slime creature from
still don't,
Monsters versus Aliens.
yeah, it's so weird to
Wow.
look at.
Yeah. If you guys have
But
never
if you
seen a
see it
blobfish, look it up
underwater,
right now. Yeah,
yeah, it's like they're doing it.
they better.
Yeah.
AKA Mr.
It's def
Blobby at the Australian Museum. Wow.
Oh, that's a good site.
Yeah, it
Sounds like
honestly
fun.
looks more like a fish than the other one does. So, do you have an
Right.
obsession with the blobfish?
No, no, no. It's just that definitely not. But it was fascinating to find out that even though we think, or at least popular culture tells us this is what this fish looks like, but when we see it in its real habitat, it looks so much different. And that was kind of what stemmed for the creation of the Not a Knot is like how to inspire kids to explore the world around them and to just wonder at that
Yeah.
and just really be in awe of the creation that we see in trees and animals and specifically underwater because that's what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. It honestly, I mean, like you said, you sounds like you're a multi-passionate person, like film composing, this, painting thing, even just coming up with the idea of the Not a Knot, and how that stemmed from your curiosity as a kid. I think that's awesome because staying curious is something that we storytellers have to do every single
Yes.
day, and it's something that I think motivates me personally because as long as I want to keep learning and keep understanding new things, I can keep improving and keep striving towards that quote unquote perfection. Even though it's
Yeah.
not going to be perfect, like I've said like three
Yeah.
times, but I think that that's absolutely amazing. And like exploring the deep blue world is. I mean, the Not a Knot EP that you came out with, I would say it's very mysterious and it evokes that sort of idea. So definitely
Awesome.
give that a listen if you haven't. I'm gonna link it in the description of this podcast, as well as I'll link your Instagram as well, so people can follow your journey
Super.
as a film composer because I know you're going places. But yeah, I mean, sounds like we've gone over a lot. One last question I had for you was,
Yeah.
so this is something that is going to be mostly just for like film composers or composers in general. So are all of your compositions, are they made like with MIDI synthetic instruments, or do you do you record on piano or record on the other instruments? Like if you play violin, do you like stack that on top of each other ever? Have you ever
Hmm.
done that, or is it mostly just MIDI type of stuff?
I think early on I had tried that and failed, but I had tried it
Yeah.
to stack instruments. Now I use either the um, virtual
Spitfire
instruments like
Labs.
virtual orchestras from like Spitfire. Yeah. So I use a lot of mostly actually everything Spitfire. And so I'll do that. If not, I'll record entirely live. So
Gotcha.
or the actual physical instruments themselves, which I prefer to do, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously since I don't play all the instruments, it's kind of hard to do. And then it's just cool for each musician's approach to their own instrument, how that
Yeah.
sounds. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a fun aspect too. So
Hmm. Sweet. Well, this has been a great conversation. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. I'm excited to see where you're going, where this craft is taking you. Because I've only seen you improve as I've known you over the past 2 years. Obviously, I'll be talking to people on this podcast that I haven't known for. Some of them even like the guy I'm interviewing. He's a writer, a screenwriter.
oh,
I
cool.
have only known him for about a week now, and I don't actually know
Wow.
him. So I'm really excited to actually get to know him a little bit in the podcast, and that will be coming out probably a week after this one. But it was awesome having you on the
Awesome.
podcast, Caleb. Everybody, I'm going to be linking his Instagram in the description. I'll also be linking his Spotify and his website where his portfolio is at, just so that you can check it out. And if you're someone who's looking for a film composer, definitely reach out to him because he's got some great ideas. He's got a big brain, and you're actually going to school for that right now, right? For your master's.
No, my master's is in public health.
Yes, public health. So he is going to be a musician in hospitals. He's going to be opening up a new market for that. So it's really cool that you're going to school for that. But your passion, look how much you've done with your passion while you have your own work on the side, like your own, job, which is crazy. Plenty of storytellers are like that. You're not the only one who's got the side hustle of what they want to do, like really want to do, but that doesn't pay the bills all the time. And, if you need a film composer, reach out to my man, Caleb Wu. He has made so much progress and I'm excited to see what he does next. But yeah, it was awesome having you on the podcast, Caleb. Thank you so much for coming out. And maybe down the road we'll have you on the podcast again. This is only the first episode, so we have to see what actually comes from this. But I'm really happy to have you on here, and it was great getting to chat with you a little bit more.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to hearing more episodes from you.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this has once again been Caleb Wu, the film composer genius from Augusta, but now in Greenville. Check his socials out in the description below. Otherwise, have a great day and keep on telling your story. Bye-bye.